in the making here with Paul George. And click, click. Your man, this is your Kodak moment.
He's 5 of 6 behind the arc.
Oh, got that steal too.
And here he goes.
Here we go.
PG
What you got?
puts
Oh,
on
yeah! Oh, yeah, PG!
That is the one.
That has
There's
to
no
be the
question.
one. Oh,
That
my
is
goodness.
the one. Look at this again.
Oh, boy.
Oh, what a pass to Scola.
Hey, that's a part of his game also, which is
Paul George with the up fake. Effortlessly knocks it down. Josh Smith with a block from behind, but George gets it back and jams it. George from the corner. George over Rodney Stuckey. Nothing but the bottom again. Paul George, will he take a shot here? Does and drains it. A lob to George, and the Pistons didn't see him. Paul George fires, fills it up. Here is Watson faking the shot. Goes to George with it, who drains it from downtown.
Working on his stuff. Dunked! Dunked! I mean, dunked! And Mike Brown took another timeout because you just had a guy dribble.
Blocked by Paul George. Welcome to the NBA.
No question. He came a long way to get that one.
George still looking for his first point. Falling away, count it, and a foul. Puts it on the floor and hits. He scored 5 in a row. Shumpert, George drew the contact and scores. This is back in January of 2011. George falling away, able to hit over Bargnani. Here's George for 3. It's good for Paul George. George driving past his man. Beautiful hang and score by Paul George, and it's a 4-point Pacer lead. They work it around to an open George, lets it fly.
Guess who? We'll get back to Hibbert. Indiana's opponent shine. I've never seen Carmelo work harder.
Here's George off balance, and George with 31 points.
Well, he's got to come get that ball. Don't put it in George Hill's hands right now. Paul George has to be the guy.
Here's George falling away. Hits another off-balance shot. That's 35 points for Paul George.
He got that swagger, too. He knows he's good. That's a big part of being great is you got to know it.
High-point score. That's a nice shot there by Paul George.
to the post. Paul George showing some moves at the rim. He's just gotten so much stronger now. Russell shooting 0 for 5 beyond the arc, 6 for 7 out of 4 from beyond the arc in the quarter, making 4 out of 5. He's just tearing it up. The pass showing all kinds of moves and a nifty little fin off of the Thunder. 10 seconds to shoot. Lamb offering ear-splitting approval. George, see, that's you got to work a while to make that happen, and he's done that with regularity here.
George, step around James. Paul George, how do you do?
Well, Paul George has been in a struggle offensively. His shooting percentage has dropped every month, but here, attacking the rim.
He's against Paul. To the baseline to freedom.
24 points a game. And that jumped from 17 a game last year, where he was most improved. So he went from 12 to 17 to 24 this year. They're not going to have anything easy. Speaking of the Clippers against this Pacer interior defense.
George makes it look easy. There's the answer at the other end. It's down to 7. Into the corner.
Too much separation. Part of their attack and go to George anywhere on that left block.
Foul's going to be called. +1. Dudley.
You talk about a meteoric rise.
3, bingo! Paul down the lane. Outside. Broken up by George. He'll go all the way. Paul George goes bingo again.
Including the last 2 under 80.
George over Bullock. He got a bounce.
And And that young man has worked very hard. That's why the Pacers are more efficient offensively, Quinn.
You know, that's what he's really starting to do exceptionally well, is to get himself to that 12.
Paul George gets inside.
Did an excellent job of getting into
The 11th rebound as Paul George gets to the basket, has now scored 8. And Indiana has a trip to Washington, D.C., usually during the summer months. For many of the older military veterans, that they weren't honored like I think we honor them today. I'm not saying then start. So assistant Dave Yeager is the new coach.
You're talking about make something out of nothing, frustrating. And there it is. This is triple-double. So you can see these guys enjoying it. So they're going to get him out of the game. But that's a heck of a feat for a young man's wrestling. But I'm the Paul George. He must have got pushed.
Paul George gets in and dunks it.
He's so good off the dribble.
Paul George in all kinds of traffic scores. He just found a way to get that thing on the glass. Paul gets up and in off the glass.
You won't see a tougher shot than that.
Got rid of DeMarre Carroll and knocks down a 2. Paul steps back, fires a 3. Look out, here come the Pacers on the wing. Pacers 56% here in the second half. Paul George bangs home a 3.
5 of 8 shooting.
And the Hawks have outscored the much renowned Pacer bench.
Extra pass. George for 3. Greg Oden only playing 9 minutes a game. Played a season-high 15 minutes in the game against Portland. Boss gets the foul as Hibbert gets the end one. Late shot clock. Step back 3 by George. Up by Stevenson. George for 3. James Clay, I'm sure, called by Frank Vogel. George stays on the floor and down the lane for 2.
Donald Sloan now comes in for Indiana. Paul George nails a three-pointer. He's 2 for 2 to start. 4 to shoot. George puts it in.
So you can't play him any better than that. He changed the record.
Paul George does, however, knocks down the 3.
That was Indiana. Here, Mike. Somebody who's going to come in and score.
Watson throws down the 3, and the Pacers with the first double.
Joe's going to have to, if he gets an offensive rebound, he's really going to have to work for it because they know how important he is on the second chance points.
There's George, just a nice dribble to lose Jimmy and got George will run here and dump the ball.
Good defense, George.
Now 2 to shoot. George wheels and fires and drains it.
That's a tough shot. I mean, Tony Snell couldn't get any better defense than
Stevenson 1 of 4 2 points. There's 3. George, Joe came over and turned that into a tough shot, but boy, you talk about a shot maker. Really tighten the screws defensively. There's a jumper by Paul George that's good as George is trying to carry his team. George loose into the lane, fade away, and that's good.
He got away with a push-off, too. He uses that left arm to get separation.
5 by George.
Defensively, he's the last line. He has to be there to defend.
Outlet, outlet, run out, behind the back, dunk by Paul George. Highlight stuff for Indiana in transition.
And then the last basket, a little behind the back, and nice finish. That's, yeah, I know. You're pretty good, Paul. You're pretty good.
George down the lane, able to score. Turned it over that time, though. Stevenson behind the back, and George with the finish.
And Harden tried to take a foul.
77 first half points. There's Paul George, a three-pointer. And the Pacers back within 9. Heat faced Indiana with 10. Here's George. They got the switch, and George buries the jumper over Terrence Jones. Indiana out in transition. George blows by his man, takes it strong, and throws it down.
Wes Matthews with a huge second half.
George 3. Got them all! After making nothing. Find inside. From Hill.
Another switch.
George.
Paul George in the pass, second chance opportunity off of the miss, and George drills the 3, driving on Ross, step back Jay, good, tough shot.
Indiana getting extra opportunities, and case in point right there.
Here's George, 3, good.
Hey, remember I said you poked the bear.
10 of 20, George is fouled, and he makes it ties it up and a chance to grab the lead. It's 88-88, 6:05 to go. Here's George. He's been on fire. He's got 26.
No question, they did foul on the other end.
Here's Paul George, his three. Banks in!
That counts.
PG banks it in!
He's been looking for this for quite some time. He's able to get.
Mahinmi is also checked in. Alley-oop!
Got that one. Got that one. The same play that was run the last time. I should say in the first half out of bounds. This time.
His three-point shot is good. Pacers can regain the lead. Cutting is Hill, and the little teardrop is good. And now Paul George floating and hitting.
Little dump off pass to Hibbert, no hesitation.
4 to shoot, out to Hibbert to beat the shot clock.
Graham, we have seen so many unselfish plays. Paul George got into the lane, probably could have forced up a shot.
And PG has the triple-double, his first of the year.
Teammates let him know, the fans let him know. I'm pretty sure he knows.
Nice pass to Hill.
And it becomes contagious. Lance has created a lot of this. For Lance Stephenson, for a lot of things that he's done, he's created.
Down 5 as he go to work. George squares up and hits it. That time he shot it confidently. George and Hill out there. Paul George fires and hits for 3.
Well, you can't let him have the shot.
Trying to end a 9-game losing streak against these guys, but Paul George gets to the rack. Hovering around that 8 spot. Paul George starts with a 3-ball. Sails inside, finished it. That's the Paul George we saw so much of the first 3 months of the season.
Change of pace by Paul George, got to the rim.
3 seconds. Paul George, pull-up jumper. PG got it. It's a long 2.
Finally able to knock one down. They're going to take a look at it. Got to have more heart, more fight.
And Paul George gets it to go. Has a chance to start this. George hits the jumper.
As you can see, he's starting to find an offensive rhythm, too.
Now Paul George, step back 3. Good by PG.
He's really starting to feel it now. He's got Caldwell Pope on the other end because they get tired.
And it's a 3-point lead. Paul George has yet to score in this quarter. He had 14 in the third. His jump shot is good on cue.
Boy, is he really comfortable coming off that screen. Well set there.
Paul George against Kawhi Leonard and gets the jumper to go. And I like how Leonard guarding Paul George. Step back jumper by PG is good. Second field goal for Paul. He's 2 for 4 tonight. George hits the 3. Off a screen from West. Paul George free throw line jumper. He has shot it better tonight. He's got 11. 4 of 16. Tiago Splitter has 9. Paul George drives on Leonard.
They see he's driving on everybody. Everybody's there watching him. And this is just too hard for him.
Turnaround jump shot by PG is good. He's got 16. And Greg Popovich takes a timeout. 7:41 to
And rolled it off the leg of Noah. Lead pass ahead. Paul George runs in. Layup good. Foul by Derek. Drive and a finish by Paul George. He just went sailing in there.
You've got to.
Well, he's going to get a lesson. I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. Paul George.
Here, and here's the alley-oop. Paul George throws it down.
Yes!
I'd like to say, can that be the one on Fox Sports Live, but that was back in. 36-30 Indiana. And that's, not to talk badly about Ian Mahinmi, but I just think sometimes you got to know why you're open.
That's the other reason why you don't take him out with 2 fouls. Both getting him to their off.
Now Paul George. It's a tough shot over on the other baseline.
And Mike Harris is in the ballgame because Favors has those fouls.
Brooks goes baseline around Scola. His shot is knocked down. Indiana running up in the front court, and look what George just did.
His athleticism, he's so long and athletic, it's off the chart.
Well, against us. I don't know. But he's got a solid set of skills, and there's a steal. Watch out, George. Showtime's it with the left hand.
Allen here.
Paul George.
Wow, another big shot. This is a team that was 0 for 12 from three-point land.
Hung around all night long.
Right, and that's why I said it, because they were getting beaten 20s, sometimes 30. They just weren't in a lot of games. You're seeing Paul George athletic.
3-point lead here early. 5 minutes gone. George knocks down 2.
Yeah, Favarani.
George looking for a shot. Takes it. Makes it.
George, little heat check. West in a mismatch, kicks it back to George. George the jumper. Two. Up to George. Easy two. Foul on Scola. Gets it over to George. George knocks down a three.
Paul George, who has blossomed into a star, trying to fend off Anderson. Off the dribble, pull-up pop.
Boy, Anderson made him work for that.
Wow. Oh, man. Rainbow delivery for Paul George. George, that's a three. Shooting practice.
Sure was. He was just parked over there.
Opening up the second half with a three. So smooth in that delivery. And then George hits a three. Right. For 43 points. George forcing his way in. And there's the turnaround with the soft, feathery touch. The crossover, the jumper. Paul George. Wow. Watson steps in front. Another steal. Lead pass. George. Look out. Reverse jam. That baseline jumper. Paul George. Beautiful looking stroke. He's got 26 points.
Back the other way and puts it up and in, and the Pacers have the lead.
Again, Scola keeps it live.
The numbers show that Thornton is in a deep slump, but you know he is capable of coming out.
Back in 2 or 3 like it was nothing.
Post out to Paul George, and his three-point shot perfect.
Paul just went the wrong way. You had it on the inside, David West.
PG for three.
Thornton, he's right there.
Count it and a foul. Thornton for three. And the Pacers have tied it.
Yes, sir. Come off of it. Hey, go down.
He got it. Paul George hits the three and draws the foul.
Oh, my goodness. He came off of that one with some steam.
We're tied. George, jumper, good.
Yeah, in overtime, you're the best defensive team in the league. And George Hill comes up with a steal. Take it all away. Oh, yeah. He makes a really good play with Paul George.
Drives on Williams. Floats it up for two.
You can call it the Nowitzki. You call it anybody you want. That's a step back, one leg. There
Here's
you go.
Stevenson.
You just space, and they spaced, and you had George Hill, David West on the outside. Yep.
And here's Paul George with a dunk.
Just find the open man usually on the weak side and they get a wide open three-point shot out of that. And Paul George gets a steal and a very solid pass there by George Hill. G2 zones connecting.
Here's Paul George, a three.
Deep three. I mean, that was a deep three. I just step and a half, almost 2 steps.
George hits it in the corner.
And he may have taken the most difficult shot from the passes that were being made.
And that's his 4th of the night.
Good read off of that screen.
Paul George, as Batum went behind the pick by George Hill and paid the price that time.
He averages about 3 a game.
They go behind the pick on Paul George, and he drills the three. George takes a short jumper and hits again. Paul George looking to answer for Indiana, and he does. Oh, he tells the crowd right now. And the dunk by George. Paul George leans into Batum and hits again. Nice backdoor cut as Paul George got Batum that time. Blocked. George on his own will finish. They go backdoor to George, and he gets the dunk. George from the corner for three, buries it.
You got to get out right here. There's Paul George. Find Paul George.
There he is. Open off a pick. Takes the three and drills it. You can't let him have any room. Back to George. Lets another three go and hits it again with Matthews right in his face.
You cannot play better defense than that. Now they'll run something for Paul George.
There it is. Catch and shoot three. And he hits the bottom of the net again. Wesley Matthews just shakes his head. 15.6 left. Matthews gets laid out. That three is blocked maybe by Lillard again. George gets it back and hits. I don't think you can believe the shots that Paul George is putting down.
Paul George drops the hammer on Big Baby.
Paul George for three.
Well, Indiana still has a low-scoring bench, even with some upgrade. Alderone trying to keep him in that corner. George still shoots, though, and hits.
He can't play better defense than that.
In front. It's a drive from Paul George. He'll get to continuation and can score the shot. And inside, Paul George able to keep it in play for Indiana. His shot goes.
Well, that reminds you.
He'll get a good one. I didn't know if he'd make it, but he'll get a good one because I don't think Singler. Oh, yes.
Finds Paul George for a three.
But a good basketball play by Lance Stevenson.
Finds Mahinmi out to PG for another three.
And Lance started it. Yeah, now they'll take the timeout. He was going to take one in the beginning, but the energy is in the building again. This is when now he's got to go. He didn't have a choice. I mean, he makes the shot. Josh Smith will get a technical before long.
Here's on the floor. Rolls it out to Paul George.
No, it should have reset. No, I can't believe that. Fortunately, you know why Paul shot it? The shot clock should have reset. It hadn't.
Lead to one with under 2.5 to play. Paul George again.
He knows Singler can't guard him. He held him while the ball wasn't in play.
And now George for three.
Now Washington 0 for 5 from long range.
Field goal for Paul George. Trevor Reason drives on Gortat. Looked like he traveled. Randy Whitman looking for some call, but
careful.
Not. Paul George spinning and hits a tough shot. Paul George met by Harrington, scored the field goal. He'll go to the line.
Now, that's the thing about these all-stars. They're so good.
George for three. Got it.
The ball movement made it, though. David West made a terrific pass.
Trailing, they have a chance to regain the lead here with 4 to shoot. Paul George creates a shot and scores.
This guy brings him right out of his pocket. If he's not going to fight for position.
Barnett comes to help. Paul George, the jumper, and that was a tough one, Quinn.
That was, but it was a good read.
Finally gives it up to George with 3 to shoot. Paul George cans the jumper.
Another aspect of Paul George's game you don't hear about around the NBA. They talk about
buries the 3 and leaves the time necessary. Win at home early in this season. George buries the 3 with Pierce in his face. George slicing through with the pull-up. 3.8 to shoot. George gets it into Scola. Handoff George for 3. He got it. That's a big one. George, difficult look, but he buries it. George, the jumper, is good. Paul George helping orchestrate a 4-point swing there.
To go. Schroeder's pass is picked by Paul George. Windmills at home.
Type of plays. Great anticipation. Yeah, wonderful anticipation.
George with a jump shot. Paul George, his first 3 attempt. Yeah, I like the way I'm seeing him lift. Paul George had 8 first quarter points, 3 of 3 from the field. 10 now for Paul. Stolen by Paul George. He's off and running. And hammers it.
Oh, he slams it. Gets this crowd into it.
This crowd saw Indiana score early and often to lead by 12. And here's Paul George in a 9-point lead. Here's Paul George, a 3.
Oh, that was sweet.
Now Paul George tees up a 3.
And he looked to make sure his feet were lined up just right.
Front line that the Pacers have, they got to run, rebound, and get out.
For a second was on James Anderson. As that 3 counts, final half minute of the first. George, but not bad.
No. Paul George, a chance to recover, but again, another nice out-of-bounds play by the Sixers.
Man. First, the collision, the bump and run with Thaddeus Young.
Right now, they need their crowd to get behind them, give them a little bit of energy because they are fighting hard.
Paul George winds his way in. Got it done. A tough 2.
Good recovery by George Hill. Knocked away.
Good hands by George Hill, too, and a pass over the top of the head, and Lance finishes it. But the defense intensity, that was one possession here in this first quarter that was like that third quarter that we saw the other night.
George, at least on this possession, nice job.
Active with those
Can't do any better, and he made it anyway.
Well, if he earns that, that's fine.
Bogut swatted it away. And Paul George has it locked. Incredibly aggressive move. Paul George bottoms a three. Paul George, what a start he's having. Goodness. Aaron George is going to get the freebie. It's a tough time for his first turnover. Yep. And George answers in his own right. Paul George. 10-0 run.
And now Paul George against Middleton. Forces up a shot and finds the net.
Got him shooting jump shots.
Paul George, jump shot good.
Court now. Oh, he popped O.J. Mayo. Paul George shooting sideways, but I mean, great screen set there by what happened to Lionel Hollins. He got to the Western Conference Final.
Yeah, we had another one.
Well, that mid-range shot, I mean, he makes three-point shots, but off the dribble, that mid-range shot.
Against Gary Neal.
See, you put Paul George back in, and at some point, they've got to get somebody bigger than him. He's like, wow. That's a guy that's just confident in his jump shot there. He popped the ball free.
Now coming in with 8 straight 20-point games and an 8-0 record, Paul George had joined Wilt Chamberlain and Dave Bing. In the post is Paul George. Has size on DeRozan and just lifts him up.
Yeah, and DeRozan's the two-guard, got matched up there. And Lance does it, and Roy finishes.
And there's Paul George hitting a 3 on the skip.
There by Roy.
Paul got it.
Great job there, splitting the double team.
The hands broke. Paul George inside.
There by David West, gets Gay on his heels. Roy Hibbert blocks out Valanciunas.
Less than 10 to play. Watson to George against Landry Fields. Orlando Johnson, a nice shot flick. And Paul George, the 3! The extra pass. Paul gave it up.
That would get the ball and then lay it coming through, which means you can't get started in your offense quite as fast.
Paul George beats the buzzer with a 3-point shot.
Oh, yeah. He was looking to make that happen.
Maybe that will be the one.
And one. That's an and one.
15 points. He had 13 in the first quarter. And there's 2 more.
Basket, he had no chance to get the ball.
PG for 3. And that is his 3rd.
Got a three-pointer out of it.
He's hit 4 of them. Could it be 5?
Yeah. Boy, is he looking comfortable at that three-point line.
34 for Paul George. 5 threes tonight.
Oh, very tough move there. I mean, he was able to find the defense and clear.
He goes right to the basket again with a left hand.
Well, he's become more determined since he got knocked.
He's been the player of the game right now. And 2 more for Paul George.
He attacks the big men, either Cantor or Fader.
And George on the flush. I love that. And Hill, George, the pull-up pop. Now, this guy is shooting 41% in threes. He takes 6 a game. A full stat line. Here's George, the quick release, and that is a pretty release. George, again. Right there, looks like they were in a zone. If Indiana will take quick shots. How about this? Here's George. Oh, that was fun. The two-handed reverse, and it's timeout time for the Houston Rockets as Paul George has Bankers Life Fieldhouse hopping. They've taken the air out of their enthusiasm. The defense suffocating, and then excellent offensive play, especially on the break. They have dominated the game on the break.
But this is exactly what you were hoping didn't happen if you were Indiana.
George taking out his do-it-yourself kit as Paul George with a sweet move to the bucket. It's in the rearview mirror either way as Paul George gets to the bucket. They've already gotten up 15 three-pointers. Paul George counters and knocks down one himself.
We talk about Millsap and his diverse offensive game. How about this young guy?
And back comes Paul George. On the break, draws the hit. Hill out to George for 3. Wow!
Knocked away.
Down to the show, the go. It'll be Paul George with the triple. Stevenson on the assist. And an early burst. And the Atlanta Hawks, a 2-year deal. And on the run, it is Paul George. Thought he got contact.
In the lead, using that to fuel the offense. And Joel and Chris, you called it. Trust is at the core of everything the Pacers want to do.
Switch. And I thought West would take it. Instead, a wide-open three. Paul George. Back to a 4-point deficit, but you're right about the spacing. Molly, thank you. And Kyle Korver took the first shot of the second half. George gets it done from beyond the arc before DeMarre Carroll. And final 4 seconds. Paul George knows the triple to the buzzer. Got it! They're alive and well in Indianapolis. Almost like an impossible situation, especially against the team that's already down. Paul George wheeling into the paint.
Back to play the way they play. Defense, which leads to that three.
Seeing that guy in rhythm.
People, good job by Paul George. They knocked that one down. Roy Hibbert on the offensive glass, they need that.
George attacks the rim and lays it in. Paul George with a terrific second effort.
West with it out high, right side, 9 to shoot in the corner.
George for 3. Got it. Paul George with some body English. Wrapped by West ahead to George into the lane. And he throws it down with the right hand.
And game 3 2 days ago, they have a chance to put Indiana in the crosshairs. And Paul George knocks down the first shot to get us started this afternoon. And George lines it up. Paul George lost the handle momentarily, but able to score.
With Mike Scott.
Ball on the floor, and Paul George comes away with it. George looking up, he'll spin, and he takes it himself. There's George Hill, and he'll find Paul George, and a three-pointer on the way is good.
This is what you expect from your best player.
Carroll guarding George. He steps back right in his face. He knocks it down. Paul George gives the Pacers the lead.
They go with the handoff, and Paul George.
Go up top for Paul George. Paul George, strong, hanging in the air. Quick cut, great pass. Watson to George. That was a thing of beauty. Indiana down 2 with the ball. Here's George for 3 in the lead. And Paul George, big time 3 to give Indiana a lead.
He is a shell of himself right now. Ontic the foul. George cans it. That's a clean look. Bottom, a 3. Jeff Teague has gotten a long rest. George hits on the triple. George to the hoop for the jam.
Spreading the court, playing just like Atlanta Hawks basketball. And there's Paul George with the drive. This is a 10-point game right now.
George a 3. Bottom. Paul George connects from long range.
As Paul George knocks down his first chance. He's been a monster in this series. Second rounders. And the friendly bounce
here early in this game.
Carroll coming off a nice game as George all the way in for the stuff. He shook Millsap free. Paul George.
Mentality of the Memphis Grizzlies.
There's Paul George out of the timeout, hanging in the air, and the finish. Dances here this year as Paul George knocks it down. Stay perhaps. All 3 games on the schedule tonight could end. And Paul George taking over. Shot clock at 2. George guarded by Millsap. 3-pointer is good. Paul George delivers in the clutch. Here we go. 37 left. And that is a steal by George. What a costly turnover for Atlanta. Lou Williams to it right in. Got hot late and found themselves in the playoffs. Good look. Oh, and a little style. Paul George guarded by Korver. George steps back and does that. About as good as anyone, Paul George. Really. And George squeeze again. Boy, how'd he get through? Paul George shifty.
Really nice moving up.
It's Paul George knocks one down, and the Pacers go up 8. They have the lead by 6. George trying to add. Paul George pulls down the board. Here's George. He's feeling it right now. Paul George with 16. 10 in this quarter. Scott hit 5 3-pointers in the second quarter in game 5 as George answers. Paul George for 3. Yes! 4 of 6 from behind the arc as George has an answer on the other. Paul George has missed just 1 shot in his last 10 tries. Splits the double team, and George silky smooth in the lane.
How about the ability to... West clears for George, a 10-2 lead for Washington. George to the hoop, high off the window, and a chance for 3. Against Atlanta.
That's very weird when you traded for that guy as George knocks down the 3. But
percentage defense, holding teams to 42% shooting. George mismatch over Nene, book it. Stevenson scraping for it, razzle dazzle, the feed to George, layup goes down and a foul. 1-on-1, no double. George, the fadeaway. Shot clock winding down. George doesn't take the jumper initially. Now he does. Tough delivery. West trying to get it to George. Fakes on Ariza. Takes it to the rim. And slams! Paul George with an winding down. George wheels inside for the deuce.
George weaving through traffic and giving his team a 2-point lead.
I like when either he or Mark Jones
goes out. And Paul George trying to change all that with a long... Stevenson passed up a 3, made the extra pass, and it pays off. Great teamwork and ball movement by Indiana.
really needs to prove his value.
George, the redirect to the hoop. Paul George, the floor. George, mismatch. A floater, Paul George. George, a bomb for 3. Paul George from deep. George fires the 3 and hits.
Give Hibbert the assist for that play.
5 on the timer. Paul George, a 3. Hill doesn't take the 3. Wall recovers. George goes to the outside. A 3 ball. He's got it.
It was such a great job of Washington.
George fires over Ariza. Bullseye for 3. George beats the shot clock and scores! Plus the foul. Paul George is locked in. Kick out for George, offers up the 3 and hits. 6-point lead for Washington with 5 minutes to play in the fourth. George, step back 3. Oh, it's good and a foul! Paul George with a chance at a 4-point play. And that's 39 now for Paul George. 1-point lead for Indiana.
And it's an easy 39.
The All-Star fires and hits. 5:10 to go. George, oh, nice job inside at penetration, and then they just forgot about it to get going before the scene shifts the following weekend to Miami for games 3 and 4. All right, so here are
George off the dribble, chased by Battier. They find West inside. Beautiful look from Paul George. Hibbert goes back door. Kicks it out to George. His 3-pointer.
First West to Hibbert, and then Hibbert, the touch pass.
George hits the jumper. George the drive. Over Anderson, knocks it down with 1.8 remaining. George for 3. Puts it in. Paul George from downtown. George running the floor down the other end. Layup is good. Beautiful fast break. Just superb playoff performances this year. George, that's a 3. Struggling all night. That's his first 3-pointer. And the Pacers go up by 7. James's injury is not an injury, it's cramping as George answers back.
Against Miami, the decisions have to be made quickly.
George forces a shot, draws the foul and puts it in. What a tough shot from George.
Attack more than a half-court offense with the clock dwindling down.
That's a sweet move from Paul George. George finds some space.
That's a great dribble move by a 6'10" small forward.
George down the other end, throws it down.
Well, what you talked about, Coach, the adjustment.
Inbound to George. George throws it down. Emphatic dunk for Paul George. And with all the heroics from Chris Bosh, George has had a good solid first half. Hits a 3. Paul George with a big bucket there. That cuts it back to 5 with and a whistle and a foul, 2 with 6:48 remaining. George tries the 3. That's good. Paul George
George on the drive, sidestep. Oh, beautiful move from Paul George.
Dallas played a great series and deserved it, but I thought they had a great year.
George, that's a three. George fell down afterwards, 4-2. George has to fire away, and knocks it down. George, his second field goal. Hibbert again, this time a shot short. George right there. And Paul George has come out of the block strong. George gets inside. Difficult move there. Another steal, this time from George. And the Pacers regain the lead. George for three. And the Pacers go up by three. West looking. George catches a three. Bang! At the buzzer. Paul George from downtown. Chalmers stayed with the play, and George did, and nails the three-pointer. George on the steal on a bad pass from Bosch. George goes at Allen and throws it down. 5 to shoot. George, tough turnaround. That's good. Paul George with 20 points. Extra pass. George is open. Hits a three. Paul George coming alive in the second half. James stolen by George. George's shot is good. 4 to shoot George. Wade trying to stay with him. George pulls up. Puts it in. Paul George again. 15 fourth quarter points for George. And a 4-point Indiana lead.
Switching on Paul George.
Paul George from downtown. Does it again. He's got 34.
What a monster. Frank Vogel's trying to get a timeout.
A three. Bang! Paul George from downtown. What a fourth quarter performance from George. And the Pacers go back up by 4.